The Gift. The massive Velderi ship hung motionless above New York City, its crystalline surface reflecting the morning sunlight in dazzling patterns across the skyscrapers below. It had appeared 3 days ago, along with 6 others positioned strategically around the globe. After the initial panic subsided, the aliens had established communication, describing themselves as peaceful explorers eager to welcome humanity to the galactic community. In the United Nations General Assembly, representatives from every nation waited in tense silence as the Velderi delegation entered. Their tall, slender bodies moved with uncanny grace, skin shimmering with an opalescent quality that seemed to shift colors with each movement. The lead diplomat, who called himself Ambassador Telex, approached the podium. Esteemed representatives of Earth, Telex began, his voice melodious yet somehow mechanical, we come bearing gifts of technology to assist your species in its development. He gestured, and several Velderi aides brought forward containers filled with metallic devices of various shapes and sizes. These are rudimentary tools by our standards, but they will help you understand the basic principles of interstellar technology. Dr. Mai Zhang watched from the observer's gallery, her eyes narrowed in suspicion. As the director of China's Advanced Science Division, she had been granted special access to the proceedings. Something about the Velderi's generosity felt patronizing, as though they were handing toys to children. The Secretary General accepted the gifts with appropriate diplomatic gratitude. But Dr. Zhang noticed the subtle condescension in Ambassador Telex's posture. The alien's 6-fingered hand brushed across the Secretary General's shoulder in what seemed like a gesture of reassurance, but resembled the way one might pat a pet. Within a week, research teams around the world were studying the alien technology. Each nation received identical sets of devices with accompanying schematics and basic instructions. The Velderi had explained that these were developmental models, meant to introduce humans to concepts they would need centuries to fully master. In her laboratory in Beijing, Dr. Zhang examined a small pyramidal object that supposedly demonstrated basic energy conversion principles. According to the Velderi instructions, it could generate enough power to run a simple light for approximately 1 Earth year. The power output readings don't match their specifications, her assistant, Dr. Lin Wei, noted as they ran diagnostics on the device. It's actually producing very little energy, despite what their documentation claims. Zhang turned the pyramid in her hands, noticing microscopic patterns etched into its surface that weren't mentioned in the schematics. These devices aren't what they appear to be, she murmured. The question is whether they're more or less than what the Velderi claim. That night, Zhang received a secure call from her American counterpart, Dr. Marcus Harrington of DARPA. Despite the political tensions between their countries, the scientific community had established unofficial channels of communication about the alien technology. "We've found something," Harrington said without preamble. "Those energy modules have hidden quantum resonance properties that only activate under specific conditions. Conditions not mentioned in any of the Velderi documentation." Zhang wasn't surprised. "I've discovered something similar. The molecular structure of these devices appears designed to interface with Earth-specific electromagnetic fields. It's almost as if they were customized for our planet." Harrington finished her thought. "I think we need to coordinate our research, politics be damned." Within a month, a covert international scientific consortium had formed, operating outside official channels to avoid Velderi observation. Scientists from 12 countries pooled their discoveries, sharing a growing suspicion that the alien gifts were not simple technological aids, but something far more complex. Dr. Zhang's breakthrough came during an experiment combining the Velderi energy pyramid with a human-designed quantum processing unit. The resulting energy cascade exceeded theoretical limits by several orders of magnitude, producing power output that should have been impossible according to both human and Velderi-provided physics. "They've lied to us," she announced during an emergency conference call with the consortium. "These aren't primitive teaching tools. When combined correctly with human technology, they function as amplifiers of incredible potential." Dr. Harrington's team had discovered something equally disturbing. We've detected microtransmissions from all the devices. They're reporting back to somewhere, presumably the Velderi homeworld. They're monitoring how we use their technology. The implications were chilling. Were the Velderi testing humanity, preparing for something more sinister, or simply observing a developing species with scientific detachment? The consortium agreed on a bold strategy. They would continue official research along the lines the Velderi expected, showing slow, incremental progress. Meanwhile, their real work would continue in shielded facilities designed to block the device's transmissions. 6 months after the Velderi departure, humanity's secret technological revolution was well underway. By combining the alien tech with human ingenuity in ways the Velderi had never anticipated, the consortium had developed prototypes that leapfrogged centuries of projected advancement. In her lab, now relocated to an underground facility beneath the Gobi Desert, Dr. Zhang stood before a holographic display showing their latest achievement, a defensive shield that could theoretically protect a city from orbital bombardment. The Velderi designed these components to work in sequence, one advancement building on another over decades, she explained to the visiting consortium members. But we've developed them in parallel and combined them in ways they never intended. Dr. Harrington nodded, adding, "Their mistake was assuming we would follow their predetermined path of development. They underestimated human creativity and our willingness to break the rules." The breakthrough that changed everything came unexpectedly. Dr. Satoshi Nakamura, a Japanese quantum physicist working with Zhang's team, had been experimenting with what the Velderi described as a rudimentary matter configuration system, essentially a 3D printer. By connecting it to their modified energy source and running it through a human-designed algorithmic filter, he discovered that the device could not only print physical objects, but could manipulate the fundamental properties of matter itself. With this, Zhang said, examining the first prototype weapon produced by the system, we could potentially defend ourselves against technology far beyond our current understanding. The moment of vindication came 18 months after first contact. Deep space monitoring stations, enhanced with modified Velderi sensors, detected a transmission from beyond the solar system. Using decryption algorithms developed from studying the alien language, they translated a simple message: preparation phase complete. Subjects progressing at expected rate. Harvesting vessels deploy in standard cycle. The consortium representatives gathered in emergency session. The meaning behind the Velderi gifts, now horrifyingly clear. The aliens weren't mentors or benefactors. They were farmers, seeding technological development to assess Earth's potential value. "They're coming back," Dr. Harrington stated grimly. "And not for a friendly visit." Dr. Zhang's expression remained calm, despite the gravity of the situation. "Then we'll be ready to show them exactly what humans can do with their junk." Across the globe, secret manufacturing facilities began mass-producing modified versions of the Velderi technology. Military personnel were quietly trained on weapons systems that operated on principles beyond current human science. Orbital platforms disguised as communication satellites were positioned to create a defensive network around the planet. 2 years after first contact, Earth waited, armed with weapons built from the very technology meant to keep humanity docile and predictable. The Velderi had handed them junk, expecting toys. Humans had turned it into a war machine. And as the long-range sensors detected the approaching Velderi harvesting fleet, Earth prepared to deliver the most unexpected response in galactic history. The response. Admiral Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the ISS Defiance, Earth's first true combat-capable spacecraft. Assembled in secret using modified Velderi technology, the vessel represented humanity's greatest achievement, and perhaps its only hope. Through the main viewport, she watched as the massive Velderi harvesting fleet decelerated into Earth orbit, 27 crystalline ships arranged in perfect formation. "They're broadcasting on all frequencies," her communications officer reported. Standard translation matrix engaged. The familiar melodious voice of Ambassador Telex filled the bridge. People of Earth, we return to evaluate your progress and guide your next developmental phase. Please deactivate any orbital constructs immediately to avoid accidental damage." Vask smiled grimly. The Veldari still had no idea what awaited them. According to intelligence gathered from their gift technology, the aliens followed a standard procedure: identify promising species, provide controlled technological samples, return when the species had demonstrated basic competence, then subjugate them as a client race, or worse, harvest their world if they proved disappointing. "All defense platforms report ready status, Admiral," her tactical officer announced. "Planetary shield grid at 98% capacity. Global Command confirms go status for Operation Surprise Party," added her executive officer, Commander Raj Patel, a hint of dark humor in his voice. Vasquez nodded. "Let's welcome our benefactors properly." The Veldari flagship, twice the size of the others, moved into geosynchronous orbit above New York, exactly where they had positioned themselves during first contact. Their confidence was evident in their formation. They expected no resistance. "Ambassador Telex," Vasquez transmitted, "this is Admiral Vasquez of the Earth Defense Fleet. We appreciate your return and have prepared a demonstration of our progress." There was a pause, then Telex's voice returned, a new note of confusion evident. "Earth Defense Fleet, our records indicate your species should not have achieved unified space capability for at least 30 more cycles. Please clarify." "We're quick learners," Vasquez replied. "Allow us to show you." She nodded to her tactical officer, who activated a sequence on his console. Across Earth's surface, concealed installations powered up. The rudimentary matter configuration systems that the Veldari had provided, now modified beyond recognition, began generating a planetary defense shield using principles the aliens had never intended humans to discover for centuries. In orbit, hundreds of seemingly innocuous satellites suddenly revealed their true purpose, forming an interlocking network of defensive and offensive platforms. And from hidden lunar bases, a dozen more ships like the Defiance emerged, taking up strategic positions around the planet. On the Veldari flagship's bridge, visible through long-range sensors, Admiral Vasquez could see Ambassador Telex and his officers in obvious distress, their opalescent skin flashing with rapid color changes that indicated alarm. "How is this possible?" Telex demanded, abandoning his diplomatic tone. "You cannot have advanced this quickly without outside assistance." "We had excellent teachers," Vasquez responded. "Your technological samples were most instructive, especially once we figured out what they were really designed for." The Veldari ships began to move, spreading out into an attack formation. Energy readings showed they were powering weapon systems far beyond what humanity could have developed independently. But thanks to the modified Veldari technology, Earth's defenses were specifically calibrated to counter these exact weapons. The first Veldari blast struck the planetary shield above North America, a blinding beam of concentrated energy that should have devastated the surface below. Instead, the shield not only absorbed the attack, but channeled the energy into its own systems, strengthening rather than weakening. "Now," ordered Vasquez. Earth's defense platforms activated in perfect synchronization. Rather than conventional weapons, they emitted precisely modulated quantum fields that interfered with the Veldari ship's crystalline structures, exploiting a vulnerability that had been discovered by studying the gift technology at the molecular level. 3 of the alien vessels immediately displayed visible fracture patterns across their hulls. The rest began evasive maneuvers, clearly stunned by the unexpected resistance. "They're attempting to regroup," Commander Patel reported, "and they're transmitting a deep space distress signal." "Block it," Vasquez ordered. Dr. Zhang's team had developed specialized communication jammers based on principles gleaned from the Veldari devices. "Let's keep this a private conversation." The Veldari flagship launched a second attack, this time targeting the Defiance directly. The beam struck the ship's modified shields, which rippled like water but held firm. "Return fire," Vasquez commanded. Show them what humanity does with hand-me-downs. The Defiance's main weapon system, dubbed the Reverse Engineering Special by its creators, fired a concentrated beam of energy that operated on principles the Veldari themselves had unwittingly provided. The beam cut through the flagship's defenses as if they weren't there, slicing off a significant portion of its upper section. Across the Earth defense network, similar successes were reported. The Veldari, expecting to find a partially developed species with limited understanding of the technology they had been given, found themselves facing weapons and defenses specifically designed to counter their own systems. They're retreating, Patil announced as several Veldari ships began accelerating away from Earth, regrouping at lunar distance. Admiral, the communications officer cut in, we're receiving a transmission from Ambassador Telex. He's requesting negotiations. A murmur of surprised satisfaction ran through the bridge crew. Vasquez straightened her uniform. On screen, Telex appeared, his once immaculate appearance now disheveled. Behind him, the Veldari bridge was in disarray, with damage visible and crew members frantically working to stabilize systems. This is unprecedented, the ambassador began, his melodious voice now strained. No species has ever reverse-engineered our seed technology to this degree. You were meant to develop along predictable paths. Humanity doesn't do predictable, Vasquez replied. We specialize in the unexpected. We underestimated your species' capacity for rapid adaptation, Telex acknowledged. The Oversight Council will need to reassess your classification. Vasquez leaned forward. Let me make our position clear, Ambassador. We've decoded enough of your communications to understand your standard procedures for developing worlds. Earth is not available for harvesting, subjugation, or any form of control. We are declaring ourselves an independent power. The Veldari's skin rippled with colors that the translation matrix interpreted as disbelief. With technology you barely understand. Your species has barely begun to grasp the fundamental principles involved. And yet, Vasquez gestured to the damaged Veldari flagship. Here we are. After a tense silence, Telex's colors shifted to what the matrix suggested was reluctant acceptance. I am authorized to offer technological exchange on equal terms. The Oversight Council recognizes potential value in unconventional development approaches. Commander Patel couldn't suppress a short laugh. They're afraid we'll share our modifications with other developing species. Vasquez nodded, seeing the leverage they now held. We're open to equal exchange, Ambassador, but only after formal recognition of Earth as a sovereign power with protected status under galactic law, which we've also learned about from your database. The negotiations continued for days, conducted from a position of surprising strength for humanity. The Veldari, facing the unprecedented situation of a developing species not only resisting harvest, but actively counterattacking with their own technology, were forced to adapt their standard protocols. 1 month later, in the same United Nations General Assembly where the Veldari had first presented their gifts, Ambassador Telex, now designated as formal diplomatic representative rather than overseer, signed the Earth-Veldari Accord. The agreement recognized humanity as an independent galactic power and established protocols for genuine technological exchange. Dr. Zhang, now serving as Earth's scientific liaison, watched the proceedings with satisfaction. She leaned toward Dr. Harrington, seated beside her in the observer gallery. They still don't fully understand how we did it, she whispered. Harrington nodded. The Veldari approached technological development as a linear progression. The concept of parallel development and creative adaptation is literally alien to them. As the ceremony concluded, news arrived from the Deep Space Monitoring Network. Other species, hearing of Earth's successful resistance to the Veldari harvesting program, were requesting contact. Some were fellow developing worlds seeking assistance. Others were established powers interested in this unexpected new player in galactic politics. Admiral Vasquez, standing with the Earth delegation, glanced at the message on her secure pad and smiled. And so humanity enters the galactic stage. not as subjects, but as liberators. The Veldari had handed humans technological junk, expecting compliance and eventual servitude. Instead, humanity had transformed these cast-offs into a galactic war machine, and, in doing so, changed the course of their cosmic destiny. As Ambassador Telek signed the final protocol, his skin colors betrayed his lingering disbelief. The species that should have taken centuries to develop interstellar capability had instead leapfrogged the carefully designed progression in mere years. The lesson was clear, not just to the Veldari, but to the watching galaxy. Never underestimate humanity's capacity to turn today's junk into tomorrow's revolution.